Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. The US military has decided to relocate troops from Jasionka Airport, a transit hub for supplies to Ukraine in southeastern Poland. The move has raised questions about the future of aid to Ukraine, regional security, and the US commitment to Europe. Joining us now is Professor Jarosław Gryz of the War Studies Academy to discuss the strategic implications of what this move means for Poland, NATO, and the war effort. Welcome, Professor, to TVP World. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you very much.
So what do you make? Let's start with the big picture. They've moved troops from the airport, the hub, to somewhere else, but within Poland.
Yes, indeed. But let's have in mind what that kind of agreement was taken last year in Washington. So we speak about the situation which was already considered, and that clearly indicate us that everything was arranged with the political decisions. So from that perspective, the political makers expected that move and expected the situation.
So this was before President Trump came into power, is that right?
Indeed.
Okay, so this was not new. It was just agreed while Biden was still in power. What's behind it? What was the reason for it?
Let's have in mind that the U.S. troops were there in Jasionka for 3 years, since the war started, the second phase of the war started in 2022. So till now, it was a time when they expected that someone will exchange them, and it happened.
So a rotation, if you like.
I think that yes, we speak about the rotation which was already agreed and was done in the proper way.
Understood. So why weren't they replaced by other American troops, but other NATO allied countries?
Well, I am not very much familiar with the equipment which is being there over in Jasionka, but I think that the replacement took place with the adequate means of, let's say, missiles, anti-missiles, and so on. So I think that it's not a matter of security or safety of this place, due to the fact that the Poles, as well as the other nations, already possesses that kind of equipment or means of war. But anyway, the decision was taken, it was agreed, and it happened.
Okay, so in general terms, I mean, do you see a shift since President Trump came into office in the American commitment to Poland, the region, and Ukraine?
Well, I see the shift, but let's have in mind the broader context of the whole situation, where we can observe the struggle between the United States and China. And that is, I think, one of the elements which President Trump have in his mind. So due to that, when we observe the decisions taken in Washington, I think that is an element of this formula of struggling for power with Chinese.
Does that situation pose a risk to the border of Poland and other countries within NATO and the EU?
I think that no, because let's have in mind that the Jasionka is being protected not only by the missiles, but also with the aircraft and also with the other means. So I do not think that the level of safety and security of this place is being diminished. I rather think that it was replaced, and now we will observe the whole situation as it is.
In terms of the NATO strategy, again, if I may come back to since President Trump came into power, has that shifted, in your view, in the way in which the security of Europe is being protected?
Well, we observe the signals given by the President Trump for Europeans to take more responsibility and to be adequate, let's say, prepared for the giving the security and the safety for Europe. And I think that from that perspective, the President Trump, in context of his first election and here in context of the second election, shaked very much the European leaders. And he really indicated them the time where the United States were obligated to give a security means for Europeans ended.
What is your assessment of how NATO countries, including of course Poland, have stepped up to this new challenge?
Well, let's have in mind that today's government, as well as the previous one, made already attempts to prepare Poland for the situation. And we can recall the investments in terms of the procurement. So that is something what lasts for at least 1 decade. And in context of Poland, it's not something new. The same situation occurs in 3 Baltic states, it occurs in Scandinavia. So I would say that from the perspective of our region, all the states are being or started to prepare themselves many years ago. But for the rest of the Europeans, it was something, and still I think that is something that they are just realizing what occurs, what happens, and how we should react.
Understood. But despite all of that, you still feel that there is really no discernible threat to NATO's borders and the European Union?
Well, we can recall many scenarios in which the Russian Federation attempts to harm NATO, harm European Union, and throughout that create a new security situation and finally create new security architecture in Europe. From very beginning, since Soviet Union starting the Cold War, the ultimate target for Russians were to withdraw of United States from Europe, due to the fact that the United States created guarantees in context of NATO, in context of the military presence throughout the decades. And since then, the ultimate target for Russians to withdraw the United States from Europe is still on agenda, and it's first on the level.
Understood. Now, going back to Jasionka and the redeployment of the US troops. Now, as we said earlier, Jasionka Airport was a hub for the transit of supplies to Ukraine for the military and other purposes. How do you assess that the effectiveness of that hub changing, if at all, after the American troops have moved?
I do not think that the role of the hub will change. Due to the fact that the logistics already work out and no one will replace it if it works. Still, it is protected and is giving a level of security which is accurate to the level of threat. Let's have in mind that we all the time have the patrols and air policing patrols in Poland and Baltic states. When we get the news that the missiles are going somewhere to the western Ukraine, we also get the information that the Polish and the Alliance air patrolling is going on and patrol the skies. So that is something what gives us a kind of guarantee that the situation is under control.
Understood. So, talking of guarantees, do you feel that the American commitment to NATO and the protection of Europe is guaranteed also?
I think that yes, due to the fact that for the United States, Europe is a partner. Even if the President Trump accused Europe that it's a very tough partner, I think that from the US perspective, there is no alternative to exchange it for what?
Understood.
For Africa?
Right. In terms of, you mentioned China a little bit earlier on, and we just heard that 2 Chinese soldiers have been captured on Ukrainian soil by the Ukrainian military. What, if anything, do you think this might indicate in terms of China's role in this war?
Well, I think that from the very beginning, we observe a situation where the Chinese and the Russians are going hand in hand. And the whole situation which we observed since 24th of February 2022 is being correlated between the Beijing and the Moscow. So I am not surprised that the Chinese were captured, and I think that that is an element where the Chinese are observing the war and taking out the, let's say, the outcomes for themselves. That is something what they are also learning due to the behavior of Ukrainian soldiers and the role of the Western equipment on the front line. So they are, I think, that carefully observing everything and taking into consideration back to Beijing and introducing into the military doctrine of themselves.
Well, China has offered to mediate in any peace talks between Russia and Ukraine. From what you say, it doesn't sound like that would be an independent mediation. Is that right?
I think that it's totally different situation. We have to deal with the situation when Russians and Chinese are going hand in hand. And if you take a look at the year 2023, when the General Surovkin, the front line were shaped in Ukraine, the heavy equipment which was brought by Chinese to Russian, at the moment when this Surovkin front line was built, was at the number of 1,260-80, the heavy vehicles which served to create this line. And the export was at the moment the highest in this context for the decade. So we cannot say that the Chinese do not support Russians, because they simply do it.
There seems to be quite a lot of evidence to support that. Professor Gryz, unfortunately, we're going to have to end it there, but thank you very much for sharing your analysis with our audience. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
And that's all from us here on this episode of World Talks. Good night.